Hello, it's Scott Manley here with episode 30 of Interstellar Quest. We're not quite going interstellar, but we have one more interplanetary mission. Where are we going? Well, we're going to go to Moho again, but this time we're hoping to be able to come back. This space probe which we are launching is going to have duplicates of every single experiment. It has 2 of everything. We're going to fly past Moho, we're going to get high altitude science, we're going to get low altitude science, and then we're going to swing around with a bit of a gravity assist, fly back out toward Kerbin's orbit, and using a bit of orbital mechanic, manipulation, hopefully we'll be able to fly slightly slower, let Kerbin catch up, and return through the atmosphere, screaming at probably 5 kilometers per second. We have a 2.5 meter heat shield for this, but the actual spacecraft itself has only a couple of pods, a couple of the material exposure bays, and really not very much mass at all. Anyway, we're about to deploy it, so let's see what happened. Okay, deployment successful, and we are going to deploy these solar collectors. And why the spacecraft is kind of rotating a little, but the spacecraft does not want to turn back the way it should. Okay, great. I guess I let go too early in the atmosphere, and I'm being punished. Well, we can ditch these things. Oh, no! Oh, wow, that was bizarre. We had some sort of weird aerodynamic effect or something there. Look at these things! Oh, man. Okay, so we still have... we get loads of time, though, right? We get like 28 minutes to apoapse, so I don't think we're going to worry too much. We're already we're going to go straight into our interplanetary trajectory. We're not going to... we're not pausing in anything, so as long as this thing can arrest its rotation, we should be able to get safely on our way to Moho, to a fleeting encounter with that planet that is so hot and inhospitable, but it gives us a huge amount of science. Of course, maybe on the next launch window we will have developed the technology to actually send something that can land and return with Kerbals. But until then, we're just going to send this whole spacecraft. This thing is not wanting to stop rotating, but I'm pretty sure it is slowing down. I thought it would slow down on that one, but I guess not. Going to fire up that engine. Once we get that thing rotating and pointing the right direction, we should at least be able to use the engine gimballing, the vectoring, to actually get us pointing the right way. Oh, okay, now I've arrested the rotation too much, and I need to bring it back around. So the space probe is what's providing all the torque, but the important thing is that during re-entry we'll detach that thing with just the heat shield, and the heat shield, because it's so heavy, will go first into the atmosphere and protect everything behind it. I was trying to build something where it would be like in a container, then the experiments would pop out and then they would seal themselves back up so they could return through the atmosphere at ridiculous speeds, but I could not make that work, unfortunately. I had a few other awesome ideas, but a bit of testing, well, the testing was ugly, let's say. And by the testing being ugly, what I meant was I did a number of tests in another game to see just how fast I could return to Kerbin. And it turns out if you've got like a Mark II capsule and you return at about 5 kilometers per second, that is about the absolute upper end of the limit. And then your re-entry corridor is really narrow, and it's not even a re-entry corridor, it's the corridor through which you don't die and you don't get flung off into space and never come back. If you get it too high, then you don't lose enough velocity. So 5 kilometers per second seems to be the limit for Mark II probes. I also found that with deadly re-entry, the experiments will sometimes exceed the G-force limits. I had a test package which contained a materials bay, and I got a message saying the materials bay has died because it exceeded G-forces, and the spacecraft was destroyed as a consequence, because then everything, it was what everything was built around, and everything pummeled into the back of the heat shield and killed it. Anyway, look, we're getting, after that burn, we have a fair amount of fuel left. We have near enough an encounter with Moho, and it's time to depart into deep space, saying farewell to Kerbin. But don't worry, we'll be coming back even faster, no doubt, because we're going to have to take a very eccentric path to actually return to Kerbin on the way around, because we're going to be going much faster than Kerbin, and after we kick out, we want to slow down a whole lot to let Kerbin catch up. So we have now the largest rocket which we have yet launched. Oh, listen to those engines. That sounds magnificent. I have to say, KW Rocketry really does. Their engine sounds have really set the standard. Okay, so this rocket is, I don't know, a couple of 100 tons. It is launching something like a 40-plus ton payload. It is launching a payload inside those 3.75 meter fairings. Up until now, I have not really been able to do much in the way of interstellar stuff in Interstellar Quest, and the reason is a lot of the really interesting items basically won't fit inside the 2.5 meter fairings. I could launch the science lab, and that's fine for refurbishing, nuclear fuel and stuff like that, but without the antimatter technology, there's very little the lab can do now. There's only a few things that it can do, and it's not that interesting. Really, most of the work comes from the ISRU refinery, and that definitely needs a 3.75 meter fairing if you're going to launch it under Ferrum. But this is something completely different. The reason I need the fairing for this is because it has a giant it has the microwave transmitter on. I'm launching a power station into orbit, and I'm going to try and get it up to geostationary orbit, or Kerbal stationary orbit. Okay, first stage is getting close to burning out. We are really, the acceleration on this thing is not particularly huge. I really wish I had main sails at this time, or 3.75 meter rocket parts for that matter. Okay, ditch that. Whoa! Oh my god, what was that? It sounded like a foghorn or something. Alert! Alert! We are going into space. You better get out of our way. I mean, seriously, this thing is huge. This is the biggest fairing you can put on a spacecraft. It was one of the things I unlocked. So it's a 3.75 meter fairing with as many sections as it'll give me. Inside there, I have a 3.75 meter nuclear reactor power station, 12 huge heat radiators, and I have a bit of a propulsion system for on orbit. But really the important thing is I'm going to dock other stuff to it. I'm not sure this time whether I'll actually take it to Space Lab 1, but I think I'm just going to try and move it up to geostationary orbit. Okay, so this thing is just about making, this makes a couple of G with all the external rockets on it, but once those burn out, we're going to be lucky to make half a G. So this is why my ascent path is pretty steep, because the time to apoapse, I want that to be as high as possible when this when we're left with this core rocket. And there we go. Whoa, look at that. Oh, it's beautiful the way that just deployed, I have to say. That was a work of art, the way that deployed. Okay, so hopefully the resistance on that thing is not too high. So these, this is the microwave transmitter on the front. We use that for beaming power about. It is not the huge one. You really need the fairings to launch these things because they have a large cross-section and they do not do well. Particularly if you have the one that unfolds. Okay, so the one that unfolds has because Ferrum doesn't know about animations correctly, it just assumes the largest cross-section, which means that it's like flying under an umbrella or something. That's why the fairings are useful. Okay, we're just really, you can see that we're moving about half a G and just accelerating ever so slowly. We're we're not even 1.1 kilometer per second. And our gravity, the ascent is slowing, and therefore slowing down everything. I don't know if this is going to get into orbit. I may have underestimated this just a little. Well, I might as well deploy the radiators because, wow, we're actually generating a lot of waste heat. Hopefully, once we have these radiators deployed, the waste heat situation will be less critical. I mean, reactors and generators, the heat radiation is actually incredibly important to it. Okay, actually, sorry, I lied. I said it was 12. It is actually 16 heat radiators. Oh, it's actually, no, wait a second. No, it must be 6 on the back and 8 here, so I don't know, that's lots. I think I was only supposed to have 6, but I messed that up at some point. And transmitter is transmitting, not that anyone is listening, but if anybody has the hardware, they will be able to pick up electrical energy transmitted by this and turn it into useful stuff. And the idea is, I want to power my plasma thrusters from it. I want to start all my spacecraft using plasma thrusters with energy beamed from this station sitting in high orbit over Kerbin. That's why I'm taking such a... that's why I built such a ridiculously huge rocket. I'm using the RCS at the moment because I'm really starting to think I may not have enough fuel here. You can see, 1.4 kilometers per second. At least I'm starting to get into the regime where my... the gravity that I'm experiencing is being somewhat offset by the centrifugal force. And I have reached my apoapse and I'm falling back. This is not good. This is not good at all. Well, let's see if we can get it. We have 33 kilometers before we fall back into the atmosphere. Maybe we can get up to speed before then. We have a bit of fuel on the spacecraft itself, on the station. But most of the mass is in that reactor. That reactor is something like 32 tons. I'm not sure how much of that is in shielding. Given that it's the Kerbals, probably not a huge amount of shielding. Oh, poor Kerbals. They don't know what they're getting into. Okay, I've got my periaps down to down to minus 300 kilometers. Velocity is up to almost, come on, almost at 1800. 1800 meters per second. Okay, we're really starting to get some speed on here, and I am hoping that if I just keep my nose up, I will minimize the rate of descent. Although I think I'm going to run out of fuel in this stage. This is going to fall back, and then hopefully there's enough fuel left on board this spacecraft. And there we go. Okay. Yeah, I guess our engine is firing. Oh no, wait a second. Hold on. Wow. Okay, so the collision system was not actually registering thrust for those things because the cap was on there. That thing that was lost was a plate that had a whole bunch of struts attached to it because I wanted a docking node on the back, and if you try to connect a docking node directly, then there's nothing to attach struts to and the whole thing will wobble around. And when your payload is like, 50 tons of, nuclear reactor, you're going to find yourself wobbling all over the place and not actually going where you want. So that's why we have the ridiculously powerful... that's why we had that clamping plate, so it had all the info, all the stuff we need. Anyway, let's hopefully get to offset gravity. We're fighting against it. How are we doing? Oh yes, we're almost to 2060. We're a couple of hundred meters per second away, but we are descending towards the atmosphere. I really don't want to fall into the atmosphere again because I do not think it would be good for us, especially since I am a ginormous nuclear reactor. and ginormous nuclear reactors tend to relieve ginormous piles of nuclear waste. That's what we're talking about. Okay, higher. Let's go to this 45-degree angle. 2.1 kilometers per second. We have almost certainly got enough fuel to get us up to orbital velocity. The real question is, do I manage to do that before I fall back into the atmosphere, or do I find myself essentially, spreading debris all over a wide area and producing a whole bunch of two-headed Kerbals or whatever. 79 kilometers. At this point, I'm wondering how close I am. I should have left the Kerbal engineer thing on this instead of on the spacecraft, right? What a moron I am. Now, in case you're wondering why I'm using those horrifically inefficient radial engines, of course, the reason is that I needed to have that docking port on the back. I couldn't put a docking port on the front because we have that giant microwave transmitter. So it had to fit on the back. Now, of course, I've set it up. I will actually be able to remove that microwave transmitter and replace it with an even larger one when that happens. But for now, we haven't unlocked that technology. We'll see how good this one is, and we'll see if we actually make it into orbit without falling back into the atmosphere. We are not out of the woods yet. We're now only 2.8 kilometers away from the top of the atmosphere, but we are moving probably faster than orbital velocity for this particular altitude. And I think actually, if you look, 94... 54, I think actually our semi-major axis is above 70, so in theory we could just kill our vertical, and that's what I'm going to start doing, is kill our vertical velocity, and that will leave us in a stable orbit outside the atmosphere. Once we're in a stable orbit, we can feel free to fly around and actually, we'll put ourselves into a reasonable orbit that will let rendezvous happen. It's you could put an object in a 70-kilometer orbit just above the atmosphere, but it's always nice to have it slightly higher so that you can come in below it. And there we have it. We escape the atmosphere, we escape falling into the atmosphere, and the pencil pushers are happy. However, yes, there is a slight problem. You may have noticed that the waste heat was rising at quite a rate. Even with 14 huge radiators, that isn't enough to deal with the massive heat output or the massive amount of waste heat that a thorium reactor is generating. So, we're going to have to fit more radiators. Unfortunately, organizing a mission and constructing the hardware to do so is going to take, a week. That's my rule, is that now we are allowing 1 week between major launches. We accelerated thing for Duna because we really wanted to get the Duna mission, a nice big manned mission, but now we want it to get there, so we're forcing 7 days between missions. However, I do happen to have this spaceplane laying around. Spaceplanes are reusable, they launch quickly, fast turnaround and all that. This is modified from the previous version. It now has a docking adapter in the middle there. It doesn't have a satellite in its bay because that's not what the mission is about. Instead, it has a toolbox which contains all sorts of very important gizmos that the astronauts can attach and remove to the target in question. The idea being basically that we'll go up there, dock onto the reactor, you perform whatever maintenance is necessary, and return home. You see, we actually have 12 days of food, so we can't actually stay there until the next crew comes up. We have to return to the planet Kerbin before then. I mean, we could in theory, I guess, make like a flight to the other, to Space Lab 1, collect some stuff and then come back. But I think these guys will just fly up and do some basic maintenance, make sure the thing doesn't melt itself down, and return. And then a week from now, we'll be able to add some more stuff and perhaps demonstrate the awesomeness of these of beamed power. Well, we'll see, actually, to be honest. But that will be my first real interstellar project. The other large thing that I've wanted to do was the ISRU refinery. I really wanted to do the whole Mars Direct thing, where you create a load of fuel on the surface of, well, in this case, Duna. But we just did not have the technology to build a fairing large enough to contain this thing. Okay, we're coming up on Apple Apps, and I am actually shocked at how close I am going to be to this station here. It's coming up behind us at about a couple of 100 meters per second, 280. It's actually giving us target relative velocity. We're going to have to do a 300 meter per second burn, and look, we're getting very close. 30 kilometers away. That is not bad. I think that's the best I've ever done with a brand new vehicle, not knowing its launch characteristics, especially with a space plane which has to travel. Okay, just burn. We don't want to overdo it. I mean, it'd be nice to let it catch up just a little more. Clearly there's a bit of an inclination difference here, but if I just correct my orbit, then we'll go off and we'll rendezvous properly. And of course we did actually go off and rendezvous properly, and you know how all this works. So we're just going to perform the docking here. As I said, we have a docking port in the back there, and most of the rendezvous took place at night, so you weren't going to be that interested in watching that. So, however, the sun did rise just in time to greet us with the first real view of this satellite in orbit. Beautiful, isn't it? All that heat radiating away from that super high-tech reactor there. And of course, you can't see the microwaves beaming out, beaming a message of power all over the Kerbin system. Hopefully not cooking ducks in flight or things like that. Okay, here we go. Docking successful. Of course, that was all done at 4 times regular speed, so my surprise was all feigned. Okay, now, Bill, you are the man. Jebediah is going to stay back because he is a pilot. Bill, you are the smart one, or something like that. I don't know. You're the one that is being volunteered to fly up to that big nuclear reactor and find the big button that says shut down. So you got to get in nice and close. I know it's radioactive. There, come on, right click, get in close. Nope, then no damage. That's great. Isn't this supposed to let me shut it down? Maybe I can shut down the generator. That's not going to work, is it? I could shut down the generator without flying around it. Why can't I shut down the reactor? Maybe I have to be like maybe it's the panel here. Do I have to be next to that panel? Or maybe I have to sit right on top of it. Oh, there we go. Manual shutdown. Okay, manual shutdown of a reactor is initiated. This thing is going to cool off and hopefully won't go all Fukushima on us. I mean, that's the deal with reactors, is that, once you shut them off, there's a lot of temporary fission products, right? You're splitting, say, uranium or thorium. Yes, Bill will no doubt be hailed a hero, at least almost as much of a hero as that Jebediah dude. So yeah, I mean, the thing with reactors is that, they work, or nuclear reactors, fission reactors work by splitting atoms, and that releases a lot of energy, but then the fission products, they continue to decay because a lot of the fission products are not stable. So those will actually decay and they will continue to release heat for several days. And it'll be a few days before it gets cool enough that we can either turn it back on or refuel it. But future episodes and all that, I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.